It all started on a Sunday. A perfectly normal, boring Sunday. The sun was shining, but not in a happy, summery way. It was that weak, watery sunshine that just shows up all the dust motes dancing in the air. I was sitting on the sofa, trying to read my book, but the words kept jiggling on the page. My little brother, Tom, was making a terrible racket with his toy cars, crashing them into the legs of the coffee table again and again. Vroom, crash, bang! It was giving me a headache. Mum was in the kitchen humming a tune that was slightly off-key, the way she always does when she's thinking about what to make for tea. It was just another day, the same as all the others. I remember thinking how everything in our house felt so predictable. We had pizza on Fridays, we watched a family film on Saturdays, and on Sundays, Dad would wash the car while Mum did the big food shop. I knew the routine by heart. I could tell you what time Tom would demand a biscuit and what TV show would be on after the news. Sometimes I wished for something exciting to happen, something different, a bit of magic maybe, or a mystery to solve. I never imagined that a real mystery was hiding right above my head, waiting for a boring Sunday just like this one to finally be discovered. Dad came in from the garden, wiping his hands on his trousers. He had that look on his face, the one that meant he had a job for me. "Lizzie," he said, his voice full of fake enthusiasm, "how about you help me with a little project?" I groaned inside. His projects usually involved cleaning something or sorting out things that nobody had touched for years. I just wanted to be left alone with my book, even if the words were swimming. But Dad had that hopeful look in his eyes, like a puppy waiting for a treat, and I could never say no to that look. So I put my bookmark in my page and sighed. "Okay, Dad, what is it this time?" He smiled, a big, wide smile. "We're going to tackle the attic," he announced, as if he'd just suggested a trip to a theme park. The attic! The one place in our house that was completely out of bounds. It was dark and spooky and full of spiders, or so I imagined. Mom always said it was too dangerous, that the floorboards were weak and it was full of junk. My heart did a little flutter. It wasn't magic, but it was definitely different. A mission into the unknown territory of our own house. Suddenly, my boring Sunday didn't feel quite so boring anymore. Tom stopped crashing his cars and looked up, his eyes wide. The attic was a legend in our house, and we were finally going to explore it. Dad pulled down the creaky ladder from the ceiling in the hallway. It unfolded with a groan, like an old man waking up from a long nap. A puff of dust fell down, making me sneeze. "Bless you," Dad said, grinning. He climbed up first, his footsteps making hollow thudding sounds above us. "It's not so bad up here," he called down. "Just a bit dusty." A bit dusty was an understatement. When I poked my head through the square hole in the ceiling, it was like entering another world. A world covered in a thick gray blanket of dust. Everything smelled old, like forgotten books and damp wood. The only light came from a single small round window at the far end of the attic. It was so dirty that the sunlight struggled to get through, casting long, spooky shadows across the room. The space was much bigger than I thought it would be. It was packed with old furniture covered in white sheets, making them look like ghosts having a meeting. There were cardboard boxes stacked high against the walls, their sides bulging with secrets. It was a treasure trove of forgotten things, a museum of our family's past. I felt a shiver of excitement run down my spine. This was much better than reading about adventures. I was in one. Dad handed me a torch. "You can explore a bit, Lizzie," he said. "Just be careful where you step. Stay on the wooden beams." I tiptoed carefully, my torch beam cutting through the darkness. I ran the light over old suitcases, a rocking horse with one eye missing, and a stack of old magazines with faded pictures of people in funny clothes. It was fascinating. Each object seemed to have its own story to tell, its own secret history. I wondered who had owned them, who had loved them. I felt like an archaeologist digging up the past. I could have stayed up there for hours, just looking at everything and making up stories in my head. My torch beam landed on a small wooden box tucked away behind a stack of bigger cardboard ones. It looked different from the others. It wasn't made of cardboard. It was dark wood, with a little brass latch on the front. It seemed special, almost like it was hiding. While Dad was busy trying to move an old wardrobe, I knelt down beside the box. Dust covered the lid, and I wiped it away with the sleeve of my jumper. It felt smooth and cool beneath my fingers. A strange feeling washed over me, a feeling that this box was important. I didn't know why, but I knew I had to see what was inside. It was calling to me. My fingers fumbled with the little brass latch. It was stiff, as if it hadn't been opened for a very, very long time. With a final push, it clicked open. I held my breath as I slowly lifted the lid. The inside of the box was lined with faded blue velvet, like an old jewelry case. But there were no jewels inside. Instead, there were papers. A small bundle of letters tied together with a pale pink ribbon that had almost lost its color. There was a tiny pair of knitted baby shoes, so small they could have fit on one of my dolls. And underneath everything else, there was a photograph in a simple silver frame. I picked up the photograph first, my hands trembling slightly. It was a picture of my mom. She looked so young, younger than I had ever seen her. Her hair was longer and she was smiling, but it wasn't her usual happy smile. It was a sad smile, a little bit broken. She was holding a baby. The baby was wrapped in a soft white blanket, fast asleep. But the strange thing, the thing that made my stomach feel all tight and funny, was that the baby wasn't me. And it wasn't Tom. I knew my own baby pictures. I had a funny tuft of black hair. This baby was fair, with a little button nose. Who was this baby? I put the photo down carefully and picked up the bundle of letters. The ribbon was so delicate it almost crumbled in my hands. I untied it gently and unfolded the top letter. The paper was thin and crinkly. The handwriting was my mom's. I recognized her loopy G's and Y's. The letter was addressed to my dearest Lily. I started to read. It was a letter from a mother to her daughter. It spoke of love and hope, but also of sadness. It said things like, "I hope you are happy, and I think of you every single day." My heart started to beat very fast. Lily. I had never heard that name before. Who was Lily? A cold feeling spread through my chest. This box wasn't just full of old things, it was full of secrets. A baby I had never seen, a name I had never heard. Letters full of a quiet, hidden sadness. It felt wrong to be reading them, like I was spying on something very private. But I couldn't stop. I had to know more. I had to understand what it all meant. It was like a puzzle, and I had just found the first few pieces. But these weren't fun puzzle pieces. They were heavy and sharp, and they hurt to hold. The dusty, quiet attic suddenly felt very cold and lonely. I must have been staring at the photograph for ages, because Dad's voice made me jump. "What have you got there, Lizzie?" he asked, coming over to where I was kneeling. I quickly tried to hide the picture, but it was too late. He had already seen it. His face changed when he saw it. His cheerful smile faded away, and a look of deep sadness took its place. He knelt down beside me on the dusty floorboards. He didn't look angry that I had opened the box. He just looked tired. He picked up the photograph and stared at it, his thumb gently stroking the glass over the baby's face. "That's Lily," he said. His voice was just a whisper. "She was your sister." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and unbelievable. My sister? I had a sister? It didn't make any sense. I had a brother, Tom. I didn't have a sister. I had always wanted a sister. Someone to share secrets with, someone to borrow clothes from. But how could I have a sister I knew nothing about? 100 questions exploded in my mind all at once. Where was she? Why had they never told me? Was she the reason Mom sometimes looked so sad when she thought no one was watching? "She was born before you," Dad continued, still looking at the picture. "She was very, very poorly, Lizzie. She was only with us for a little while." He explained that Lily had been born with a heart that wasn't strong enough. The doctors did everything they could, but it wasn't enough. She had passed away when she was just a few weeks old. He said it was the saddest time in their lives. They packed away all her things, including this box, because it was too painful to look at them every day. They thought it would be easier to just not talk about it. I looked at the picture again, at the tiny baby girl. Lily, my sister. It was so much to take in. I felt a wave of sadness so strong it almost knocked me over. Sadness for the sister I never got to meet. Sadness for my mom and dad, for the terrible secret they had been carrying all these years. It was like a piece of my family's story had been missing, and now I had found it. But it was a broken piece, a piece full of tears. I understood now why Mom's smiles were sometimes sad, and why Dad worked so hard in the garden, as if he was trying to bury his feelings in the soil. We went downstairs, Dad carrying the wooden box carefully in his hands. He didn't say anything on the way down the ladder, and I didn't either. The ordinary world of our hallway felt strange and different now. Mom was in the living room folding laundry. She looked up as we came in, and her eyes went straight to the box. All the color drained from her face. She knew immediately what we had found. She sat down heavily on the sofa, the pile of clean clothes forgotten in her lap. Tom was still playing with his cars, but he stopped and looked at us, sensing that something serious was happening. Dad sat down next to her and put his arm around her. He placed the box on the coffee table between us. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece. Then Mum took a deep, shaky breath. "I suppose it was time you knew," she said, her voice small and wobbly. She looked at me, and her eyes were full of tears. "Her name was Lily. She was our first baby, your big sister." She reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were cold. I squeezed her hand back, trying to tell her it was okay, even though I felt all jumbled up inside. Mum started to talk, and as she did, it was like a dam breaking. All the words and feelings she had kept locked away for years came pouring out. She told me about how excited they had been when they found out she was pregnant. She described knitting the tiny shoes and decorating the nursery. She spoke of Lily's birth, the joy of holding her for the first time, and then the terrible, crushing fear when they found out she was sick. Her voice cracked as she spoke about the long days and nights at the hospital, hoping for a miracle that never came. Tears streamed down her face, and Dad held her tighter. I just listened. I didn't interrupt. I let her tell the whole story, every painful detail. It was heartbreaking to hear, but I knew it was important. She needed to say it, and I needed to hear it. She told me how after Lily was gone, the house felt so empty and quiet. They couldn't bear the sight of the empty cot or the tiny clothes, so they packed it all away in the attic, hoping to pack away the pain with it. They never spoke of her, thinking it was the best way to protect themselves, and to protect me and Tom when we came along. They didn't want their sadness to become our sadness. But secrets, I was learning, have a way of making their own kind of sadness anyway. After Mum had finished speaking, the room was quiet again. She was leaning against Dad, looking exhausted but also a little lighter, as if telling the story had lifted a huge weight from her shoulders. Dad looked over at me. He still had that sad look in his eyes, but there was something else there too. Relief, I think. He cleared his throat. "We should have told you before, Lizzie," he said softly. "We were just scared. We didn't know how. We thought we were protecting you from the pain, but we were wrong. Secrets don't protect people. They just build walls between them." He explained that for years they had lived with a shadow in their hearts. Every time my birthday came around, or Tom's, they would think of Lily and the birthdays she never had. Every time they saw a little girl with fair hair, it would remind them of her. They loved me and Tom with all their hearts, he said, but there was always a little piece of them that was missing, a piece that belonged to Lily. They had tried to move on, to be happy for us, but the secret was always there. A silent guest at every family dinner, at every Christmas celebration. Dad reached into the box and took out the little knitted shoes. He held them in the palm of his big hand, and they looked so tiny and fragile. "Your mom made these," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She sat up every night for a week, knitting them. She poured all her love into them." He looked from the shoes to me. We were so afraid that talking about Lily would make the sadness come back. But hiding it didn't make it go away. It just made us feel lonely with it. We were lonely together. Your mom and me. That was the part that made me understand the most. The idea of them being lonely together, in the same house, sharing the same secret but not sharing the feelings. It seemed so sad. I realized that families weren't just about the happy things, the pizza nights and the summer holidays. They were also about the sad things. They were about holding each other's hands when things are tough and sharing the tears as well as the smiles. Hiding the sad parts didn't make them disappear. It just made the happy parts feel less real. They hadn't just hidden Lily, they had hidden a part of themselves too. I looked at the photograph again. Lily, my sister. It was still so strange to think about. I had spent my whole life as the oldest child, the big sister to Tom. But I wasn't. I was the middle child. Lily was the oldest. It changed everything. It changed the shape of our family in my head. Before, it was a neat little square. Mom, Dad, me, and Tom. Now there was another person, a person I would never meet, but who was a part of us all the same. She wasn't a scary secret anymore. She was a person. She was my sister. I asked Mom and Dad if I could keep the photograph. "Of course, darling," Mom said, wiping her eyes. "She's your sister too." I decided to put it on the little table next to my bed. At first, it felt sad to look at it. I would think about all the things we could have done together. We could have played dolls, shared a room, argued over clothes. I would have helped her with her homework. She would have been there on my first day of school. Thinking about all the missed moments made my chest ache with a strange kind of grief for someone I had never known. But after a few days, something changed. When I looked at the picture, I started to feel something else besides sadness. I felt a connection. I would say good morning to her when I woke up, and good night before I went to sleep. It was my own little secret, but it was a happy one. I told her about my day, about the funny thing Tom said, or the book I was reading. It felt like she was listening. In a way, I was finally getting to know her. She wasn't just a sad story anymore. She was part of my life, part of my daily routine. Even Tom, who was too young to understand everything, seemed to get it in his own way. We showed him the picture and said, "This is Lily. She's our sister in heaven." He just nodded seriously. A few days later, he was drawing a picture of our family. He drew Mom, Dad, me, and himself holding hands. And then, right next to me, he drew a little stick figure with wings and a halo. "That's Lily," he said proudly. "She's flying with us." I felt tears spring to my eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were happy tears. Lily was no longer a secret. She was part of our family picture. The weeks after the discovery in the attic felt like a new beginning for our family. It was like a window had been opened in a stuffy room, letting in fresh air and sunshine. We started to talk more. Not just about Lily, but about everything. Mom and Dad stopped walking on eggshells around the past. They would share little memories of their time with Lily. Small, precious moments of joy they had experienced with her before the sadness came. They told me she had a funny little hiccup and that she loved the sound of Dad singing to her, even though he was always out of tune. One Saturday, we all went to the cemetery. It was a quiet, peaceful place with lots of trees. Mom and Dad showed me a small, simple stone with Lily's name on it. We had brought flowers, a big bunch of bright yellow daffodils. We each placed one on the ground in front of the stone. It wasn't a sad visit. It felt right to be there, all together. It felt like we were finally visiting her as a whole family. Dad told Tom that this was a special place where we could come and think about Lily. Tom just patted the grass as if to say hello. Standing there, I didn't feel the cold chill of a secret anymore. I just felt love. The change in Mom was the most noticeable. The sadness that used to hide behind her eyes was gone. She still had moments where she would look thoughtful, but it was a different kind of quietness now. It was peaceful. She started humming again in the kitchen, but her tunes seemed happier, more certain. She laughed more, a real, deep belly laugh that made her eyes sparkle. It was like by letting the sadness out, she had made more room for happiness. Our house, which had always felt happy enough, now felt truly joyful. The unspoken tension was gone. Even our old routines felt different. Pizza on Friday felt more like a celebration. Our Saturday film nights were cozier. Our boring Sundays were now filled with more talking and sharing. The secret had been like a crack in the foundation of our family. We hadn't seen it, but it had made everything a little bit wobbly. Now that it was out in the open, we could finally fix it. We were stronger now, not because we were perfect, but because we were honest. We were a family that had been through a great sadness, and we had found our way back to the light together. Looking back, that boring Sunday changed everything. Finding that box in the attic wasn't an accident. I think it was meant to happen. Our family needed it to happen. We needed to let the secret out so we could finally heal. For years, my parents thought they were protecting us by staying silent. But what we really needed was the truth. The truth was sad, yes, but it was also part of our story. And every family's story has sad parts, as well as happy ones. You can't just pretend the difficult chapters don't exist. You have to read them and learn from them. I learned that families are complicated things. They are not like the perfect families you see on television. They are messy and sometimes sad, and people make mistakes. My parents made a mistake by keeping Lily a secret, but they did it because they loved us and didn't want to hurt us. And I learned that forgiveness is a huge part of love. Forgiving them for not telling me, and them forgiving themselves for hiding it for so long. Forgiveness is what allows you to move forward, not by forgetting the past, but by accepting it as part of who you are. The biggest lesson I learned is that love is what holds a family together. It's stronger than secrets, stronger than sadness, and stronger than time. The love my parents had for Lily was still there, just as strong as the day she was born. And the love we all have for each other is what got us through it. By sharing the story of Lily, our love didn't get divided or smaller. It grew. It stretched to make room for her, to include her memory in our lives. Our family wasn't broken by the secret. It was made whole by the truth. Now, when I look at the photograph of my sister by my bed, I feel a quiet sense of peace. I am grateful that I got to know her, even in this small way. She taught me so much without ever saying a word. She taught me about sadness and strength, about secrets and truth, and most of all, about the incredible, unbreakable power of family love. Our family is different now. It's bigger by one small soul, and it's better for it. We are not a family with a hidden secret anymore. We are just a family made of memories and moments and a whole lot of love.